Privacy to us is a human right.
Now that's what this is all about.
When a trillion-dollar corporation devotes a significant amount of marketing screen time to talking about protecting users' privacy, it's good. It's actually very good. So good that
it scratched that part of my mind, part that doesn't allow good to exist without condition.
So I started digging. I didn't have to go very far to realize that all this privacy grandstanding is nothing more than just a selling point. A convenient jump on the privacy bandwagon by a company that declares a moral high ground by stating privacy is a human right. Until you realize how quickly they are willing to trade this fundamental human right for profit when the Chinese government tells them to remove privacy-focused VPNs from their app store. VPNs would not only allow Chinese users to bypass the Great Firewall, it would also protect them from the government surveillance, which could easily result in human and civil rights abuse the Chinese government is so notoriously known for. Apple's lack of hesitation to stand up for what's right is multiplied by the fact they turned their backs on the very providers that stood by Apple in the court battle with the FBI. But that's what this is all about, right? Apple provides encryption so strong that no one can get into their phones. No government, not even Apple, can get into your phone. But this case wasn't about privacy. This was about the government forcing a private company to do the job of the law enforcement on their behalf. Apple had all the rights to oppose effectively forced labor. Because the fruit of the labor in question would amount to mass surveillance, it just happened to be the case that Apple was on the right side of history this time. It's astonishing how many people applauded Apple while completely forgetting that all this time, Apple has been secretly working with the US intelligence in covert NSA programs. This is why Edward Snowden never endorsed iPhone, because the exclusive access for the US government has already been built into the device. When the secret NSA partnerships were finally revealed by Edward Snowden, Apple was quick to deny any participation in PRISM or giving the government backdoor access to their servers. You would want to give Apple a benefit of the doubt, but then Facebook provided the exact same answer. So all of a sudden, none of these companies are secretly working with the NSA and all the leaked documents were just made up? No. The NSA partners were forced by a gag order not to disclose any form of cooperation at all under the threat of heavy fines. After the public outcry, the big tech lobbyists came out with a watered-down reform that allowed the companies to disclose the number of requests for user data in annual transparency reports, but no further details about those requests would be specified. But Apple was only following the trends. Google and Twitter came before Apple with publishing their transparency reports. In 2013, the Electronic Frontier Foundation ranked Apple the worst out of the big five in collaborating with the surveillance state, even worse than Comcast, Amazon, and Facebook. Reviewing the scores 5 years later, Apple came out on par with Google, not as a leader setting trends on what's right, but as a follower. In fact, Apple cleverly compares their practices with their seeming rivals like Google and Facebook. Objectively, Apple can argue their business model isn't primarily based on monetizing customers' data, because Apple makes money primarily from selling hardware. But if Apple was fair, they wouldn't compare themselves with software companies, but other hardware companies. Because when it comes to the software Apple provides, they aren't treating your data any differently than other software companies. Apple made a big marketing point out of the statement that they are not selling your data to advertisers. But Facebook and Google also claim they are not selling your data to advertisers.
And we do not sell data to advertisers.
So that's the problem solved. Nobody is selling our data to anyone, and we can all go to sleep. But they know very well what they are doing in legal terms. There is no direct sale of your data you submitted directly to these companies by using their services. In this sense, Facebook isn't selling contents of our messages, Google doesn't sell your search history, and Apple doesn't sell your location. But that's only a part of the story. User data are their most valuable asset, and they don't want to just give it away. What these companies are doing alongside this is that they allow developers and other third parties on their platforms for a fee. These platforms are letting developers access their users' data, and as long as there is a button that says agree to the terms of service, they have no responsibility for what happens with users' privacy. This business model is a lifeblood to Facebook and Google as much as it is to Apple. Third-party developers bringing in their apps are raising the value of their platforms. If Apple really cared about their users' privacy and wanted to distinguish themselves from the rest of the big tech, they would take advantage of their walled garden and ban privacy-invasive apps from their app store altogether. But they are not gonna do that. Yet they still somehow managed to win yet another standing ovation from the privacy crowd by banning Facebook's paid research app from their enterprise developer program. But this ban had nothing to do with privacy. Apple's developer program exists for companies to distribute apps internally among their employees and not consumers. Facebook did an oopsie when they began selling this app to regular consumers from the enterprise developer program. As a matter of fact, none of the Facebook apps were removed from the official App Store. It was just a minor inconvenience for Facebook employees for a while when they had to download their apps from their regular App Store instead of the enterprise version. Google got also their iOS certificate revoked until the status of the both companies was eventually restored. A minor internal disagreement was turned into a major publicity stunt. Apple is good at what they do, and what they do best is not making great phones, laptops, and other devices. Apple's best product is marketing. Apple is perfectly fine with allowing iOS apps that track users' precise location data and sell it to retailers and marketers to follow users everywhere they go. Like Google, Apple gives you the option to limit tracking by advertisers, which is the same feature as the Android option to opt out of ads personalization. Unlike Google, Apple is successful at turning this into another marketing point that's meant to give their phones a moral high ground over Android. Even if Apple took proper steps to block all these privacy leaks from third parties, they are still collecting the data your phone generates, just like Google does. In this sense, you are not any more private with Apple than you are with Google. You just have to trust Apple they will protect your data, just like you have to trust Google and Facebook. iCloud is Apple's biggest Trojan horse, seducing users to turn it on by offering convenience. iCloud gives Apple full control over every bit of data it transmits. Even though it is encrypted, Apple owns the keys and can access your contacts, transaction history from iTunes and App Store, SMS messages, pictures and videos, contacts, audio recordings, and your calls logs. Companies that promise you strong privacy and security begin with preventing themselves from accessing your data. Apple doesn't do that. Apple possesses keys to unlock your iCloud account, which is why phishing Apple employees is the #1 tactic to break into people's accounts. iMessage promises end-to-end encryption, but its implementation is very poor when compared to other protocols like Signal. iMessage doesn't provide any interface to verify authenticity of contacts people are communicating with, and thus Apple can inject keys that would enable them or law enforcement agencies to monitor your conversations in real time. iMessage doesn't implement any way to obscure metadata, and so all your contacts, IP addresses, timestamps, and the size and presence of attachments is open for surveillance. Apple has recently begun claiming that all the information they collect about you is anonymized through a process called differential privacy. Differential privacy is a mathematical method of injecting random noise into a database to make it more difficult to identify individuals. Differential privacy comes with values called epsilons, where anything above 1 is considered a serious privacy invasion. Apple keeps these values secret, and the source code implementing it is proprietary. This in itself defeats the purpose of implementing differential privacy in the first place, because you cannot actually verify whether your collected data is anonymized sufficiently. But the worst thing is in the epsilon values themselves. According to an independent review, macOS yields epsilon of 6 and iOS 10 is at 14. Values this high are considered by academics to render the implementation of differential privacy pointless. After one upload of obfuscated data, Apple has a 50% chance to identify individuals. After 2 days, the probability of successful identification rises to almost 100%. For comparison, Google also implements differential privacy, and their internal analysis revealed an epsilon of 2. It's really interesting to watch Tim Cook criticize the business model of Facebook and Google while making deals over customers' data with both of them. Facebook gave Apple exclusive access to retrieve information from users and their friends without their consent or knowledge, potentially allowing Apple to track Facebook users' relationship status, religion, political leaning, upcoming events, and other data. Setting Google as Safari's default search engine is going to make Apple $12 billion this year. These Google searches aren't any more private than on other browsers, yet Apple is comfortable with letting Google vacuum up gigantic volumes of users' data. Apple's latest cute attempt to pretend to be privacy cautious speaks for itself. Installing a hardware switch that only works if you close your laptop kind of defeats the purpose. Yes, it is a step in the right direction, but in the world of information warfare, where every bit of personal information is fought over like a piece of treasure, we cannot celebrate small steps. We are gigantic leaps behind. They could have done it like Purism with their Librem laptops that offer hardware switches for both microphone and camera and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth that let you actually use the device when you activate them. But they are not gonna do that, because Apple doesn't really care about your freedom and your rights. Apple is the one that owns your devices, and Apple is the one that's in control of your data. I'm not telling you to throw away all your Apple products. All I'm saying is that you can't trust them.